Hey there, welcome back to Antoinette Reads. If you're new here, I'm Antoinette Reads, and on this channel, we make reading hot again. Whether you're a long-time listener or just stumbling upon this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram where I post updates and upload schedules. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 8. Teasing and Intriguement. The first lesson of the day flew by, followed by Transfiguration and then Potions. The students dotted about the classroom brewing various different substances and scribbling down the notes that Slughorn had written on the blackboard. Hermione sighed, flopping into her seat and pushing her cauldron aside. For some reason, she just couldn't seem to concentrate, and no matter how hard she tried, the potions just didn't come out right. "Are you feeling all right, Hermione?" Harry frowned. "You seem a little down." The girl shook her head. "No," she smiled. "I'm fine." But she wasn't really sure if she was. In fact, her eyes kept wandering over the other end of the classroom, finding their way to where Malfoy was sat. She would glance at him, and when they made eye contact, he would raise his eyebrow ever so slightly, allowing himself just enough time to make her squirm in discomfort. That feeling, the feeling of his cold eyes lingering on her, was filled with such confusion that she couldn't even formulate how to react. She would look away, but at the same time something inside her didn't want to. "Good afternoon, students." The door swung open, and in walked Professor McGonagall, followed by several timid-looking first-years. They were all wearing new robes that were significantly too large, and were clutching their cases to their chests, their small faces full of fear. "Professor Slughorn, could I borrow Granger and Malfoy?" She spoke calmly. "I might need them for the rest of your lesson, I'm afraid."
"Certainly," he replied, gesturing at the two to leave. "Your essays will be due in a few days, the pair of you."
Hermione immediately jumped to her feet, followed by Draco, who didn't look so excited. They made their way out of the door in a hurry, looking around in confusion at the herd of new students. "Good afternoon, Professor," Hermione said clearly. "Is there something we can do for you?" McGonagall nodded before turning to the first-years. "Here are your head boy and girl," she said, and they took an intimidated step back. Now, there's no need to be nervous." Hermione smiled as warmly as possible at their fearful faces, trying her best to look approachable. Draco remained expressionless, glancing at Hermione with a raised eyebrow. "Hello, I hope you've all settled in nicely," Hermione welcomed brightly. She turned to Malfoy, waiting for him to continue, but the boy simply gave them a rather solemn nod. She shot him a dirty look before turning back to them with a strained laugh. "He's just tired, don't worry about him," she said, coughing awkwardly. "But anyway, what can we do for you all?" "I was hoping you two could give them a little introduction to Hogwarts and tell them what we do here," McGonagall explained. "I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have a tour." "Of course," Hermione smiled, nodding her head happily. "We have time." McGonagall thanked the girl before turning back to the group. "Now off you go with Hermione and Draco. Chop chop." The first-years looked around at each other before gulping and shuffling uncomfortably towards the pair. The group had been transferred from another wizarding school in America, joining halfway through the year that was difficult, and Hermione felt a great deal of pity for them. Although they appeared afraid, she couldn't help but notice how in awe they were of their surroundings. After all, Hogwarts was a magical place. "All right, let's go," the girl grinned energetically, leading the group down the long hallway. "There's so much for you to see." They traveled around the school, listening as Hermione blabbered on about the history of Hogwarts, showing them various rooms and corridors. Draco walked closely behind her, trying his best not to laugh at how bored the pupils looked. "Ah, the library!" Hermione cooed as they arrived outside the door. She turned around to face them excitedly, and Draco rolled his eyes, not prepared for another lecture. "This is one of my favorite places to go. It's full of wonderful—" "I'd have to agree there, Hermione," Draco cut in, folding his arms with a devious smirk. "I mean, it's such an incredible, interesting place that we all really want to hear about." There were a few giggles from the group, and Hermione's lips pressed into a thin line. Very funny, Malfoy, she growled, feeling her face flush a little.
I'm serious, he exclaimed, and Hermione shot him a look of death. Please continue. I could die from anticipation. But before she could even open her mouth, Draco interrupted again, gesturing at the door to the library vaguely. Now, this is the place to be if you want to be top of every class, or have some twisted idea that you're better than everyone else, he began, glancing at Hermione with a sickly sweet smile. Isn't that right, Granger? Hermione glared at him, watching his eyebrow raise mockingly. Right. Game on, Malfoy. She turned back to the group with a forced smile, placing a hand on her hip. I couldn't agree more, Malfoy. His smirk faded into a confused frown, and she grinned, beckoning them towards the door. You know what? Change of plans. I want to go somewhere a little off course. The girl marched out the exit of the building, followed by the puzzled first years and an equally confused Draco. She strode across to the empty flying fields, stopping dead in the middle where the Quidditch pitch was clearly visible. This is where the Quidditch players like to practice, she began loudly, flicking her hair over her shoulder. Everyone will look up to you if you're on a team. Apparently, it takes some serious skill to knock about on a broom for a couple of hours. Draco shook his head, but there was a small smile playing at his lips. I suppose you're right. It's not too difficult to learn how to play Quidditch, he admitted, but he didn't look at all fazed. In fact, I don't think I know anyone who can't get the hang of something so easy as flying. Draco paused for a moment, scratching his head. Oh, wait, he gasped, eyes widening. Can you? Hermione opened her mouth to retaliate, but shut it again. Whatever, she muttered, sticking her nose in the air. Draco's eyes gleamed in amusement, and he adjusted his tie, beckoning the first years to follow him back to the castle. I think we're done here, don't you? He drawled, and they nodded, trying their best to hide their grins. Hermione huffed. She hated losing arguments to Malfoy, and as she watched him stride up the long pathway to the castle, she contemplated whether or not to give him another punch in the face. Hermione sat alone in the common room that evening, her eyes shut in an attempt to get some sort of rest. Draco had gone down to meet Blaise in Hogsmeade, leaving the place quiet and empty. The tour with the first years had gone well until Draco has interfered. Though Hermione's efforts had been appreciated, the group had seemed to suck up to him fairly quickly. He had a way of making anyone admire him with that stupid Malfoy charm. Hermione sighed and reached for her book. But as her hand grasped the object she had thought to be Hogwarts a history, she frowned at how different it felt. She glanced downwards, raising an eyebrow. The book she was holding was not hers, but a black journal with a smooth leather cover. The girl had never seen it before, and she searched it for some sort of title or heading, flipping it over and scanning the spine. Nothing. Slowly she opened the front page to reveal the inside cover. In small handwriting it read, Diary of Draco Lucius Malfoy. Hermione bit her lip. Draco kept a diary? What could he possibly... What are you doing with that? Hermione span around in shock. To her horror, there stood the boy himself, a look of anger plastered across his face. He snatched the book from her grasp, clutching it tightly to his chest. That's private, he growled, looking away. You better not have read any. Hermione sat open-mouthed, unable to find the right words to speak. Draco muttered something under his breath before storming past her into his room, flinging the book on his bed and slamming the door. Merlin, Hermione sighed, furrowing her brow deeply. She knew Draco was a troubled boy, but when she really thought about it, there was a lot she didn't know. It wasn't really her business, but it didn't stop her from wondering. What could Draco Malfoy be hiding? She contemplated asking him, but quickly discarded the idea. What could she possibly say? If she was ever going to get through to him, she needed him to trust her. Hermione snorted, as if that was ever going to happen. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you found this video interesting, then give it a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. Love you guys. Bye.